everyone. This is David Ellis once again, and I'm joined with Rick Tilson. You remember the guy with Awakening Aliens and the Occult, that lecture that you guys liked, and Bob Hill. I thought about bringing these guys together because we agree on nothing at all. We don't agree on anything. And so it will be a very interesting discussion because we have different views of esoterics, but we can actually talk about the different views of on esoterics because Bob is a channeler, as you know. Rick has been into metaphysics for many, many years, also proponent of the Monroe Institute, and you guys know my background in Western and Eastern esoterics, okay? So I suppose we should start the discussion off with Bob. Bob, you believe in nothing.
That's not true. That's not true.
What do you believe in?
I believe that we create our own reality entirely. So everything that you believe is a result of what you create, or everything that you experience is a result of what you believe and consequently create. And so my thing is, be careful what you believe, because it can complicate the hell out of your life for absolutely no valid reason at all.
All right. You see, I actually agree with that. And I've seen it play out many, many times with different people. Bob doesn't get caught up in the minutiae of esoterics. So he doesn't necessarily care about the chakras. He doesn't necessarily care about all the different kinds of magic and cord cutting that there is out there. For Bob, the magic is what you believe and what you create in terms of manifestation. Okay, now, Rick, you have a background in meditation and so on. To a certain extent, I would have to agree that's true. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so now, my first question, I suppose, for Rick is on the concept of aliens. There are lots of people in the esoteric world that believe in all sorts of fantastical things. They believe in gremlins, goblins. Bob, while I'm saying this, they believe in gremlins, goblins, all sorts of things. But it doesn't help them a hell of a lot with regard to managing their lives. So where is the balance with regard to managing your life, being able to pay the bills at the end of the year, do your taxes, exist in society, and still believe in whatever you believe in?
Are you asking me?
You're asking me?
Yes, I'm asking both of you, but Rick, you can go first.
Well, I think that probably what Bob just said, the beliefs we hold will manifest as our reality. And the first thing on anybody's mind should be a happy life. Have what we want, not what we don't want. So alter the beliefs until we get a happy life.
Tell me, Bob, where's the division between the esoteric line and the practical living line? One of the things that I found about a lot of people who get into spirituality is that they usually use it as an escape. And so they believe in a whole bunch of things that takes them away from what they actually need to be doing in this life. And so I suppose people can believe what they want. Like as an example, I'll give you an example. Let's say that I believe in, I don't know, this flying spaghetti monster as an example. And I believe hard in that thing. There are no flying spaghetti monsters out there, but I'll tell you what there is: creditors, and going through life and being able to feed myself and my family. Don't smirk. I know I don't have a family, but don't, right? But being able to feed myself, let's put it that way. So where is the line between someone's belief system in terms of manifestation and the practicality of everyday living?
There is no line. It's all an illusion. And when you start to separate and make one more difficult than the other, then you begin to believe that one is more difficult than the other, and consequently, you create the lie. But there is no lie. It's all an illusion. It's all a big joke. And when you learn to treat it like a joke and understand that you can manipulate the illusion, then it's no harder to remove cancer than it is to drink a beer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you believe? And so when you believe that it's difficult to pay your bills, when you believe that there won't be enough money there, and you hold that thought in your mind, guess what? It's going to be difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But when you don't hold those beliefs, when you believe that you can create it, not only can create it, but expect it to be there, then it's there. What do you believe? If you believe that your chakras aren't in balance and you're going to get ill, I just about can guarantee you that the least little thing that bothers you, your chakras are going to be out of balance and you're going to be ill. I'm not suggesting that one way is better than the other, because it's your belief. I'm not criticizing people who hold the beliefs. Maybe they enjoy it. Maybe they think that that's, the way they have to live their life. That's entirely up to them. But when you believe, for example, that you have to have certain crystals around you in order to be healthy, what the hell happens if you lose the crystals? I just don't get it.
If you guys remember, Bob came on the show and he says that he's not a very spiritual person. He doesn't fit the bill of the spiritual person, but he does channel an entity called Josiah. Okay, so Rick, I suppose we should get you in on this conversation. So my question is, what about collective belief? So is collective belief and singular individual belief connected in any way, or is it just the same thing?
Probably depends a lot on the person. To say that there is a collective, I'll probably never know. I'll only know my experience. I look around and think that I see the collective, but do I really? I only ever see my version of it. A practical application for what Bob was talking about, and perhaps you should get him to tell the story about meditation at work. And I have a small story about it. I had a client who was really difficult. I had to see him about once a week. And I hated going there because this guy was so awful. I thought, I bet he beats his wife and stuff, like it was just awful. I hated going there. And so I meditated on it before I went to bed, before I went in the float tank, every day for about 10 days. The next time I went there, I don't know what happened, but it was like he was my long lost relative. He could not be nicer to me. He even brought customers to me from that area, and good customers. So everything just flipped, and I don't know what I did other than I meditated on that problem. But Bob has a story about how using it proactively in business. This was proactive in business too, but his is a nice story too. Tell that story, Bob.
Well, when I started meditating, it had nothing to do with attempting to connect with some type of spirituality. It had to very practical. It was like a guided meditation where I visualized people coming into my business. And as David and Rick both know, I ran a very small business, or actually a very successful business, but in a very small town, 150 people. And you also have to realize that in all of Saskatchewan, we only have 1 million people. And so there's not a huge population to draw from. Not only that, I was miles from anywhere in a very small village, as I said, 150 people. And so I meditated every morning, and I visualized my phone ringing and people coming into my shop. And I ran that business for close to 20 years. And during that time, I never advertised other than put my name in the phone book. And yet, over time, I began to have clients in almost every state and province in North America. And I became very well known at what I was doing in that community throughout all of North America, and still am today. Even though I haven't done it for 20 years, I still get phone calls from people asking me about various questions about the business or if I would help them. So that's why I meditated. It wasn't spirituality. It wasn't to get into that spiritual thing. The flip side is, and I truly believe this, that when you meditate, regardless of the reason, you get some health benefits that are the byproducts, if you wish, from meditation. You get reduced stress levels, reduced anxiety levels. You get lowered blood pressure, and I think it's just very healthy. I think it's good for everyone to meditate. That's my belief.
All right, Rick, you are part of the Monroe Institute. So meditation for you is it's kind of like a necessity, a vocation, and also a passion of yours. It would have to be. And so tell us a little bit about that, because my background has been in TM. Tell us how the Monroe Institute goes about the concepts of meditation. Is there like a beginner's program? Is there some sort of gradation, or how does that work?
Right. Well, I'm an outreach facilitator, so that means I put on weekend workshops. I'm not an employee of Monroe or anything like that, but I am certainly an advocate of them. And the way I first found out about Monroe was I read Bob Monroe's book, Journeys Out of the Body, in 1980, because it was kind of the cult classic in the classic out-of-body literature available at that time. And I set my intention to go to Monroe, but it took until my birthday in 96 before I finally bought a place there. And they had, other than the weekend workshops that I do, which get a person into the Monroe system, that first thing that you do when you go to Monroe is called a Gateway Voyage. And that week-long program is an introduction to their system. So then you learn their lingo and different systems so you can take other more advanced programs. There's no such thing as advanced in meditation. But programs where if you didn't have the lingo, you would fall behind. You wouldn't be able to keep up to what is happening, really. You'd probably feel lost. However, Monroe, in my opinion, is meditation, deep meditation made easy. And just how the Bon of Tibet have a tradition of going into a cave for 30 or 40 days of intense meditation with the idea of thinning the veil in a near-death experience type way. That trip to Monroe for a week for me is that 30 or 40 days in a cave. Now, the Tibetans felt that they might have an experience while in the cave, but more often than not, it would be a week or two after they left the cave and came back to the real world where the experience would happen. For me, with Monroe, sometimes it happens there, and sometimes it happens a week or two after I get home. But surely, once I've gone there, something big's coming down the pipe.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I suppose the next question I have to ask is, from my experience, meditation can be very much a cumulative experience. So for you, Bob, you started and you never expected to end up as a channel. These things just happen and they're subtle and over time. But for you, was it subtle, or did that just happen to you one day?
I'd been meditating for a very long time before I started channeling, probably for about 30 years almost before I started channeling. And when I say that I started meditation because I wanted to improve my business, but eventually, if you meditate, no matter what your reason is, you will reach some areas in your consciousness that make you realize that there's more to life than what we experience in our conscious state. And I got there. I mean, it wasn't guided meditations or anything. And so I got there. I started actually running meditation groups in my basement, and they were guided meditations. And frequently, almost all the time, I was the one that ended up leading the meditation, not particularly because I wanted to, but because nobody else would do it. And then a couple of times I started saying things that I absolutely did not know where that thought was coming from. And as well, it wasn't anything that I necessarily believed in. And so I would stop. And the group that was there was saying, you were just getting into some really good stuff and you stopped. So after that had happened a few times, there was one particular day we were doing the meditation, and Rick and another friend of ours, Robin McCauley, and my wife, Myrna, were the only ones that were there. So I asked them, do you want me to try that, see if we can get more of that message that you guys all seem so excited about? And Robin told me, I'll never forget it. She says, that's what we come for. We can meditate at home anytime we want. And so
I gotta meet this Robin. I gotta meet her.
and so I agreed. And I said, okay, well, if that's the thing, what you want, and if there's such a thing as some entity that wants to try this, then let's see what happens. And that was the first day we really channeled. And Rick will confirm, it was pretty slow and hesitant, because every time one of those thoughts that I would be talking about would come into my head, and I would think, oh no, that's not the way it is. And I would stop.
You were literally arguing with the entity that was coming through. That's hilarious. Right. Yeah. That's hilarious.
At first, I was quite aware of what was being said, but then I found out that if I ignored that, I could get into a different state of consciousness, and I began to have some other experiences that some people might call enlightening, but I'm not a fan of that word of enlightening.
Oh, you're not a fan of the word enlightening. You see what I mean? Go ahead.
But I began to have some other experiences that made me feel like I would way rather have those experiences than listen to the channeling. And so now I no longer remember what's channeled, because I'm way more involved and way more interested in the other stuff that's available in your consciousness when you use that opportunity to meditate rather than to channel. So that's what I do.
Speaking about basements, I have been in Rick's basement trying out something called a hemisync, and that was an interesting experience. Now, I've been meditating, I've been doing TM for many, many years, and I have to admit, that was quite the trip. That was quite the trip that you took us on. It was a group of us, and we went to Rick's house, and he hooked us up to a device, which I'm not actually sure what the device does, but he's about to tell us, which is kind of dumb now that I think of it. I must really trust you, actually. Rick, tell us about the hemisync machine.
Well, this was just CDs played through an amplifier through headphones. Mm-hmm. So we each had our own headphone, but otherwise, this one was not binaural beats, which Monroe is so famous for. It was something called SAM, Spatial Audio Modulation, which was developed by the Monroe Institute as well. And it's a similar, it seems to make the brain react in a similar way to hemisync. Similar but different, but definitely interesting. And that one that I played for you is a beta, which I got way early on when they first developed the SAM technology. But it's a good one. It's a very good one, definitely.
My experience during that time was that there was it was like a step down level. It was stepping down, and it was very subtle. I believe like we were all happy on our way. Of course, Bob wasn't hooked up to anything because he doesn't need to be. So we were being stepped down, and I've meditated, as I've said, for many, many years, and that was very subtle sort of recalibration. It didn't take much effort. My background is in transcendental meditation, and it usually takes a while to make that sort of step down on your own using mantra, for instance. So that was very interesting. But Bob, speaking about meditation experiences, when Bob channels, both Rick and I are usually present, and the meditation during that time, the meditation that we're using during that time is very, I'm trying to find an adjective to describe it. It's clearing. It's clearing. It's like if meditation were perfume. Really, that's what it is. Why is that, Bob? And have you heard those kinds of comments?
No, I mean, I can tell you that people who have been coming and continue to come for the past 22 years don't come to listen to Josiah or to listen to me. They come for the opportunity to be involved in that meditation that's the result of the energy. Now, I think it's also really important that people understand that that energy is created by their belief that it will be there. It's not some spirit from somewhere that's coming down.
You see, this is why I asked the question on collective versus individual. I didn't come expecting anything. Here's the thing. I didn't come expecting anything. I did not come because nobody told me anything. It was an opportunity for me to meditate and be there because I'm just the camera guy, right? So I did meditate and there was a very huge difference. I don't know whether it's the group effect or whatever the case may be. This is why I asked the question on whether there's a collective effect on, and is there a collective effect and is it meshed with the individual? Because I can tell you, I didn't come expecting anything.
And I understand that, but you obviously listen. And if you listen, and as I say, I haven't listened to the tapes or the meditations for years, but I know what they say because they've been saying it for 20 years. There will be an opportunity for you to meditate. And if you join in with the energy of the group that you have created here today, that you will have the opportunity to interact with other entities that have joined us on this afternoon. And I mean, that may not be exact words, but that's basically what they tell you. They inform you to take advantage of the opportunity of the energy that you have created to enter into an altered state of consciousness. And so the thoughts put in your mind, and you go, and particularly if you're a meditator, you go with it. If you're not a meditator, there have been people who sit here and say, I can't do that. They've tried to meditate and they can't do that. But people who believe that they can meditate find that it's a very inviting type of energy, but it's their energy. There's not some entity that's magically coming in here and creating this for us. It's the collective energy. And ironically, when we go to Rick's in this scenario that you just talked about, I don't wear the headphones, but I still experience the same meditation because of the energy. Just my thoughts.
Rick, in terms of people who have difficulty meditating, because I've heard this many times, I'm not quite sure. I usually advise people that if you're trying to meditate, you've already started off on the wrong foot, because you're assuming that it's something that you have to try at, whereas meditation is more of a natural state. Do you have any tips or tricks for people who are, well, inverted commas, trying to meditate?
Well, sure. If they can't go to Monroe and take a course, which I highly recommend, and no matter who they are, they will learn how to meditate. But the simplest tools for meditation are a repeated mantra, a rolling mantra that doesn't stop, or counting your breaths, breathe in 1, out 2, in 3, out 4. Those two systems are the most powerful systems I have found. And like Ramana Maharshi used to say, counting your breaths or that rolling mantra is like when they start to train baby elephants, they take and drive an iron bar into the ground, and then they chain the baby elephant to the bar. So elephants, as you know, they're always feeling stuff with their trunk. If you take an elephant through a market, he's feeling the apples and he's feeling the people's heads and he's in your pockets and all over the place with his trunk. So when the baby elephant is chained to that iron bar, he grabs the iron bar because there's nothing else there, and he holds it. And after a while, they don't even have to drive the iron bar into the ground. They can just hand it to the elephant and he will hold it. And Ramana Maharshi says, a rolling mantra or counting your breaths is like that iron bar for the mind. It allows you to control the mind and stop it from going willy-nilly all over the place. So those are two very simple techniques that anyone can do.
Yeah, exactly.
2 thumbs up. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, exactly.
I agree. I agree. When I meditate, and I can get into a meditative state pretty deep, pretty fast, I count my breath. And like Rick says, I never count above 4. If you start trying to count higher numbers, you forget where you're at, and then you start thinking about the numbers rather than your breath. It takes me I count my breath for about maybe 4 or 5 seconds, and then I can hear my heartbeat. Then I count my heartbeat. I don't count my breath anymore. I count my heart beating. And that goes on for a while, and that takes away any other thoughts that are coming into my mind. They're much easier to get away from because I can continue to count, to listen to my heart beating. And then when I begin to get messages or thoughts that are between the heartbeats, then I know that I have slowed time down enough that I'm ready to get into the meditative state. So that's the experience that I go through, and that's my technique when I meditate. And I don't use music or anything else, but that's just because that's how I learned and how I practiced was without music. I'm not saying don't use music. I think it's very beneficial for most people to have music because it's another thing that's happening in your mind that helps you to not think about all of those daily thoughts that continuously want to come in there and interrupt you.
One of the questions I'm asked most of the times when I used to teach meditation was, David, what do you think about when you're meditating? So I guess I'm going to ask everyone in the panel, what do you think about? What do you think about, Rick? What happens inside there?
Well, that's the reason for using the rolling mantra or the counting of the breaths or the heartbeats, is to get focused into that one thought and eventually no thought. And for myself, when I meditate, I try to just sink deep into the stillness, as deep as I can go in the stillness without getting caught up in all that psychic stuff and those dreams and stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, we are going to get sucked into those other lifetimes or dreams or psychic stuff from time to time. That's just going to happen. Maybe most of the time. But from time to time, for me, it's more healing if I can just stay in the stillness and not touch any of that stuff. There's something, a healing quality about going very deep into that stillness and, as I say, touching infinity or God or whatever you want to use for wording for that. Just as deep into the stillness as possible. That's my piece. Bob?
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Well, and I agree completely with Rick, because you see, I think even when you're altering your consciousness and going into that meditative state, this ego that we are continues to try to distract us. And so you have these experiences that look really inviting, like a past life experience, for example.
Right.
And so you want to stop there because you want to experience that. Well, it can be just as distracting as the thoughts about what you have to do tomorrow can be distracting. And so you learn to put that out of the way and to come back to this, Rick says, that stillness, and use whatever it takes to get there. And as I said, for me, it's my heartbeat. And you come back to that and come back to that. And if you learn to do that enough, at some time, you will reach a point where you experience that unconditional love that from which we create this reality, and you will be in tears. You will be absolutely overwhelmed by the emotions and the feelings. And then you begin to understand how much of an illusion this really is that we experience in our awakened consciousness state.
No,
Just my belief.
I absolutely agree with you. And I tend to add a few words of wisdom here. There's a passage in the Bible, for those of us who read it, for those, the look on your faces, right? There's a passage in the Bible which goes, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and then all things will be added unto you. Remember that verse, that biblical verse? I think people meditate with an agenda in mind. So a lot of people go into meditation because it'll make them more psychic. It'll help them remember past lives or whatever else. Something that hypnosis was actually a lot better at, right, than meditation, and people don't know the difference. And you're right, they get caught up in the psychic experiences. They're like, oh, this is so cool. But what are you here for? What are you here for? And so they try to bend more to this. And people think there's a mistaken belief that psychic awareness is some sort of stepped up stage. Psychic awareness is normal awareness enhanced. That's what my belief is. It's normal awareness that is enhanced. It is a clarification of the information that is coming in through your five senses and when they're working together. So you haven't really climbed some great ladder when you have become psychically aware. What has happened is that you have become more aware. Okay. The real benefit is when you are able to, as Rick was skirting around, touch the universe, infinity, the no end, the stillness, the nothing happens because nothing else needs to happen. Because at the end of the day, all the psychic awareness is going to do is trap you into some idea or illusion, which is why I asked Bob in the last interview I did with him, you could have put on a turban, like you could have put on a turban and become Guru Bob Love, the channel, and have like droves and droves of people coming to you, waiting to throw money at you. Oh, Bob, save us from ourselves. But you chose not to do so, which is I gotta respect that, because that would have been easy for you to do. That would have been easy. Why didn't you?
It's like I told you the last time, because I have everything I need. And I'm not just talking everything that I need materially. I have everything that I need to know who I am and why I'm here.
Mm-hmm. So my question, Rick, you could also put on a turban. I think you'd look good in a turban, Rick. I think you look good in a turban, some white clothes and stuff like that, and become Guru Rick. Why didn't you become that person?
Well, I do the Monroe weekend workshops from time to time, and that's enough. Teaching people to meditate is probably one of the nicest things that you can do. And as far as wearing a turban and all that kind of stuff, is that often, Bob? You're not doing that anymore?
You know, Canadian Halloween just passed, right? So what? Anyway, so no, I think that a lot of people live in a state of unawareness. You see, here's the thing: if you went out there and you found somebody who is enthralled with whatever reality that they're creating, which does not necessarily serve them, and you say to that person, "Hey, we should learn to meditate," it would be, and I have done it, the equivalent of trying to explain the concept of jumping to somebody who, like a snail, really, right? It doesn't register to them that their reality is within their control. It doesn't register to them. They're going to wonder, what the hell are you talking about? When you meet these hard luck cases, people who believe that their luck is hard, and their luck is hard, so to speak, is there any way to break through to them to just say, hi, you don't have to do this anymore? Or is it just their journey that they need to go through?
There is no journey you need to go through.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the first, in my opinion. This is my opinion. You don't need to take it as being right. But in my opinion, there is no journey that you need to go through other than the one that you create yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to go through that stuff unless you choose to. And ironically, whether you believe it or not, at some level of your consciousness, you choose to. And until they choose not to, then they will continue. You create your reality. If you think that you don't create it, you can. That's not right or wrong. I mean, I really don't care. If you think you don't create your reality, you'll have all kinds of examples to validate that belief. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. Maybe you enjoy that. Maybe you enjoy all of those challenges and stuff that you put in front of yourself. But it's not a case of having to do that. It's a case of choosing to do that. And there's a big difference between needing to do something or required to do something or think you came into this life because there was a certain thing that you had to do or you have certain lessons to learn. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong for you to believe that. I'm just saying it's a waste of your time to believe that, So what do you want?
Okay. I was actually listening to a few of your recordings because I actually do listen. Yeah, I do. And on one of the recordings, Josiah was making a point that the arrangement between the abuser and the abused in an abusive situation is a reality created by both the abuser and the abused. Obviously, that is going to be a very unpopular, but it's true. It's going to be a very unpopular belief, but it's true, depending on what level of mind you're looking at. There's a contract, understanding between the abuser and the abused as to what reality that they're creating. And the abused has the power to stop, to make it go away. And that was one of the more empowering recordings that I've actually heard. However, I could see how people can misinterpret this construct. And so to clarify, you create your own reality. Is that what the essence of that recording is, like every other recording?
Basically, yes, that's what they're telling you. You create your own reality. Josiah has said many times to different people who are interested in that subject that the abuser is in control. When the abuser, not the abuser, rather the abused, the victim is in control. When the victim decides to end the scenario, then it ends. And there was a woman from Regina who was a social worker who came here several times, and she really got upset over that statement. And actually, I think the first time Josiah said that was when she was here. In other words, it was something that she wanted to hear what was the situation. And I was quite surprised when that came out, because it doesn't sound right when you say the victim is in control. And so Josiah continued to say that and has said it several times, the victim is in control. And one time someone asked Josiah, because Josiah had said, when the victim decides to end that relationship or the scenario, then it ends. And so someone asked Josiah that, how come then sometimes these victims are murdered when they end that relationship? And Josiah said, we didn't say that you would like the way it ends. We said it would end. And you see, we're always searching for that ending that's in our mind is a very positive or happy ending. And yet, when you hold the belief that it's not going to be a positive or happy ending, then you validate the belief. And I'm not suggesting that it's a right or wrong belief. I'm just saying that what you're experiencing is a result of that belief. It's up to you to decide whether it's right or wrong.
So I'm going to thank you for that. I'm going to take the subject a little bit darker. Rick, let's talk about death.
Sure. This is, can you see that?
Yes, I am that.
And one of my favorite books. And in answer to your previous question, he would often say, and so did Ramana Maharshi, that when the fruit is ripe, it will fall. And until the person is ready, that you can talk away at them until you're blue in the face.
Mhm.
Until they're ready to hear, they're not going to hear it.
Mhm.
And not that what we have to say is any righter or any wronger than anybody else. Do what you want. I mean, be happy. But about death, what did you say?
Yeah, we're going to talk about death because that's a subject that people don't usually talk about, especially when we're talking about that. It stemmed from what Bob was talking about with regard to the abuser and the abused. Most people see death as a bad thing. I'm sorry.
Westerners do, yeah.
Yeah, most people see death as a bad thing.
Not in the East. In the East, they see it as probably one of the best, the most orgasmic things that they will ever experience.
I can hardly wait.
And that, so many people go to Monroe because it is such a powerful system to thin the veil that a neurosurgeon called Evan Alexander wrote about his, where he died for 8 days and had all these experiences. And he used to poo-poo people and talk down to people who said they had near-death experiences because there was no such thing. It was all chemical reactions in their mind, in their brain. And then when it happened to him, he realized it was something real and he went on a search. And because he lives nearby the Monroe Institute, he went to Monroe and he said, this is the closest he could come to that near-death experience, thinning of the veil that he had ever experienced. And as I tell people, one class that I went to at Monroe, everyone in that class was an LSD user. I was the only one that had never tried it. And they all said they got as expanded at Monroe, at a week at Monroe, as what LSD does. And Bob and I both experienced a guy who was an LSD user back in the day. And at the
story. Go ahead.
Second day of the workshop, he says, he's sitting on the back of his chair, perched on the back, and he's big smile on his face. And he says, is this stuff like LSD? Meaning the hemisync. But it's not the hemisync. It's the meditation experience with the group energy and combined belief system. What is it Bashar calls them? Permission slips. The Monroe system is a very powerful permission slip for us to thin the veil and experience that near-death-like experience. Yeah. To experience death while you're still here. Nice. So if you want to experience death while you're still here, go to Monroe.
Yeah, as the Maharishi says, if you want to be free from death, die a little bit every day.
Do not take the LSD because you know my story about the gorilla and sex with the gorilla.
Yes, I do. So, Bob, you want to chime in here? How's death sitting with you?
Well, I mean, death is an alteration of your consciousness. And it's certainly nothing to be afraid of. We've all died many, many times. And once you've experienced that, and you can do that through meditation, you can have that experience. You can go to that level, which what they call a near-death experience, and get into that between lifetime state of consciousness. Once you experience that, you wonder why the hell you don't go there and stay there all the time, because it's a way nicer than what it is in our awake consciousness state.
The dense state, correct.
Yeah, so it's nothing to be afraid of. I have things that I enjoy doing on this earth, but other than that, I'm looking forward to the day I die.
Let's not say that too loudly on this broadcast. So I got a story for you. While I was practicing hypnotherapy, there was an individual who was very, very much afraid of death. It was a pathological phobia of his own mortality. And so hypnosis is a wonderful tool because it allows you to simulate a lot of things. So he came into my practice and I killed him. I made him go through the death experience in his mind. It was very traumatic for him. He cried and all that stuff. And he kept coming back. I told him that he has to commit to 6 sessions, and he came back and I killed him again. Okay, by the 3rd time, this man is beginning to like it. 6 sessions down the line, he's turning up 15 minutes early for his appointment to get killed. He's happy about the whole scenario. He's like, this is the most peaceful thing ever. This is the best thing that's happened to me in my life. I began to get worried for the very simple reason that this man is liking this death thing a bit too much. Now I have to cut him off from the whole death addiction. So he's still around, he's meditating and stuff like that, but he's understood that that is not necessarily something that he should fear. But my personal experience with going through that scenario, because I had to test it on the self and so on, I think death is traumatic if that's the concept of it, if you're not a meditator and you're not dying a little bit every day. You may be afraid of how you're going to die. It may not be the most pleasant thing, but pain is fleeting. But the freedom that you get is here nor there. And nowadays, if you see it coming, there's no pain involved anyway. They have drugs for that. So this is what we're talking about. But to leave this earth in good stead is always a good thing, which would remind me, with regard to the concepts of past lives and so on, we did touch on it a little bit earlier on. I don't really get into the past life discussion that much. What is the value of attaching past life memories to the self in this incarnation?
What do you believe?
There we go.
Because I think that for you to attach the values of a past life one to this particular lifetime is like living and worrying about what happened to you 5 years ago and thinking that it has to affect what you're doing today. Only if you allow it to affect what's happening to you today.
Understood.
And so don't do that. This karma is BS. Don't believe in that stuff, that you're locked into that kind of stuff. I mean, if you want to believe it, you'll experience it. But why, again, it's one of those things. Why would you bring it into your life and make your life so difficult?
Correct. All right, Rick, what do you think about the whole karma episode and how it functions? Because honestly, when somebody does something wrong, they develop something called guilt, or if they don't develop guilt, some of us don't have that kind of function. They develop something called guilt and they draw consequences generally to themselves.
Sure. And so, why would you do such a thing? For sure.
Exactly my point.
I know. Often I have a float tank, and whenever I've been in the float tank and Bub sees me, he always knows. I don't know what he sees, but he sees something. And one day he says, "One day you're going to wake up dead, and you're not even going to know the difference."
Cause and effect. Cause and effect, correct.
As far as karma, I mean, this reality is an illusion. How much more of an illusion is karma and ideas from other lifetimes? And sure, while they might or might not be, one of the things that alien energy, to use that word, that's not the right word. One of the ideas of this new age and this new energy is that we will alter our past lives and no longer have those ones. We'll pick different ones that we think, because we believe in that web that you're talking about, that all these things affect us. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that the indigo children are doing, and they're doing it right now, is altering their past lives. So they no longer have this one or that one that was giving them perhaps bad DNA or bad karma or what have you. All of those belief systems.
Mm-hmm.
And they know they can change it all.
Understood.
And when you see an indigo, you can feel it. There's no mistaking that indigo energy. They know they deserve to have it. And they're going to change their life one way or another. They might be soft, but they own that they can change their life. Have what they want.
Yes, the awareness that your reality is a function of what you believe is very powerful and empowering. All right, guys, we've come to the end of our broadcast, but I'll let you guys have the last word. So, Rick, go have at it.
I really have nothing to state. Stillness is the nicest thing. Just be still. Be still and know that I'm God, if you like quotes from the Bible.
Go ahead.
I think that it's important for people to understand that their beliefs are their beliefs. I once had a woman shaman tell me that from now on she would refer to me as the no bullshit guy, and and so I'm pretty hard to convince, because every time someone comes up with some of these ideas, my first question is, where did they get that from? Who was the first person to come up with such a dumb idea and then actually bring it into and make it such a part of your reality? And so I'm not criticizing people. In fact, Rick has almost every gadget that you can imagine to help alter your consciousness. And he will tell you, I don't use any of them. And yet I don't criticize his use of that kind of a thing. And Rick and I are the very best of friends, even though many times in terms of some of that stuff, we're at the opposite ends of the spectrum. So don't think that because I don't agree with your beliefs or I don't hold them myself means that I in any way judge you. I don't care. If you're a very religious person and that religion helps you live a better and more fruitful, enjoyable life, go for it. If you think that carrying a crystal around your neck is going to make your life better, then wear the crystal. My thing is, it's just way too much stuff to worry about. The only belief that I have, and the only thing that I have with me all the time, is a jackknife, and I use it on a daily basis. Now, that's an important thing to own and to believe in. Way more important than crystals.
Jackknife. If I was braver, I would ask you what you use the jackknife for, but if it's a Saskatchewan, so I'm just gonna leave it. For real? That would be a jackknife right there,
Yeah, right there. See, just like that.
Go on, I love the people out there. Listen, now I gotta get myself a jackknife. Okay, so anyway, guys, wait, do I have a jackknife? Hey. Guys, this has been our show for today. This has been interesting. Rick, I believe you do facilitation. Do you do it online as well or in person only?
Oh, you mean for the Monroe workshops?
Yes.
They are in person, weekend workshops.
Okay.
And that it builds the momentum because you spend all day for 2 days doing tape exercise or CD or digital exercises now, I guess.
Yeah.
But it is a compounding of beliefs, like that group energy, when 2 or more are gathered in my name, very powerful belief. And then the binaural beats, and then the chanting, and the on and on statement of intent. All these things that Monroe includes in their system are like compounding beliefs, or permission slips, if you prefer, to help a person reach that really deep thinning of the veil experience in their meditations. And I don't think I've never heard anyone say that they had the weekend workshop and didn't love it. They all love it.
Okay, excellent. I will be attending the next one, so.
And I would agree with Rick. I mean, I have attended several of his workshops, and I never put the headphones on. I have never listened to the Monroe tapes, but the energy that's there, and because I meditate along with everybody else several times during the weekend, and the energy that is there is great. It really is good. People should note that Rick keeps those groups down to 8 or 10 at the very, very most, because it becomes very difficult to control all of the feelings and stuff that comes out when you get a much larger group, because it's a very intense weekend. So if anybody has the desire to experience the Monroe Institute without going there, I would highly recommend that you spend a weekend with Rick. It's very entertaining and very enlightening, to use that word, enlightening.
Well, guys, that's been our show for today. Rick, Bob, stay on. But otherwise, guys, I'll see you guys later. Take care.